So I really want to try and give you guys some practical application when we think about some coaching skills and how to walk through a situation of conflict with our child. This is a training that I do pretty frequently with all of our staff that work here. I've kind of taken a 2-day training, tried to pick out bits and pieces and fit it into about 30 to 35 minutes of presenting to really give you guys some focused information. If you really find this beneficial, please, please, please come to the parent retreat. We're going to have a lot more time to go in depth, and I'll be around today if you have questions. So the first thing, if we have a child that, your student's struggling, and maybe they're just kind of in that down spot and just really not wanting to do anything, we need to find a way to approach them. Does anyone ever feel like as soon as you walk up to them, it's already over? Like, man, I just walked up and I might as well not have even approached the situation. What percentage of our communication do you feel like comes from the words that we're actually speaking? Take some guesses. 40, 10, 15. 7% comes from the words themselves. If I come up and I say, Billy, I really care about you right now. What is Billy probably hearing? I'm really angry, okay? So only a very small percentage comes from the words that we use. It's really about how we say it. Actions really do speak louder than words. So that's what a lot of this presentation is going to be about, is considering how our actions are actually communicating to our children. Just take a look at this picture. For me, this was kind of powerful. When I think about actions speaking louder than words, it doesn't really matter what the page says. The fact that there's reaching out and there's an embrace says so much more. So we want to try and create alignment with the way that we approach. Okay? A lot of times we choose the outcome before we've even said the first word. So a large part of this is figuring out what are we silently saying. There's 3 large categories that I just want to quickly touch base on. Again, this is like an hour and a half's worth of training about body language that I want to just give a couple quick little points, and we can really dig through it later if you want to. So body language, gestures, the things that we're doing with our hands, the way that we're moving, our facial expression, and probably one of the most important is physical contact. Are you guys familiar with safe touch? Have you heard that use here? Of how we have that safe touch. As I approach a situation, to give just a little bit of safe touch says so much about my intentions in that situation. The fact that I actually want to show a little bit of care before I even say anything goes a really, really long way. Voice qualities. How loudly we're speaking. Have you ever approached your student when they're in kind of a rough spot and maybe you talked a little too loud and that then escalated things? And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not what I was going for. The way that we come across with just our volume, our tone, how fast we speak. If I get going really, really quick, I'm probably going to make them a little anxious. If we're trying to calm them down, it really is about being in a calm place ourselves. And then our actions. This is probably one of the toughest ones to get and figure out. James, could I have you stand up here for just a second? You're the closest and you're not eating. So if I'm approaching James, and I walk to James and I want to talk to him from here, is there anything that I'm communicating about my distancing here? Maybe James didn't take a shower today. That's not the case, trust me. I smelled him earlier. Okay, if I'm kind of standoffish, I really don't want to engage. Maybe I have a very small bubble. If any of us have kids that are on the autism spectrum somewhere, and they walk up and hi James, how are you? It creates a little bit of anxiety. We want to really look at how we approach and have a distance that is safe for our child. Okay, our child might actually feel a little bit safer coming in close. That's where it really is individualized with your student. Thanks, James. Yep. How attentive we are, if we make eye contact, if we're actually taking time to listen. We'll go over that in just a minute. And then our attitude. I tell my coaches all the time, if you come in and you're positive, your kids will be much more positive. Your day will run much, much better. If you come in and you're negative, if you don't kind of check your personal stuff at the door and you're grumbling around, it comes out really quickly with our students. Would everyone agree there? Yeah, if you're in a bad mood, it's almost impossible for the student to be in a good mood. So as we approach the situation, we're kind of thinking about these things. What are my voice qualities? What are the gestures? What are my physical actions? How are they affecting my student? And we've now approached the student. So here's a tool that I want to give you. It's called mirroring and matching. All right? It's a tool for aligning. This is one of the most beneficial things I think that our staff can do, because it really starts to break down barriers even without saying anything. So it's a way of controlling your body language so that you align with the other person and immediately build rapport. Rapport is just that relationship. You feel like, you know what, we're kind of on the same page. There's some sort of connection here, and maybe I don't know what it is, but I kind of like you. Anyone ever have that feeling when they meet someone? Anyone ever had the opposite feeling? I don't know what it was about that guy, but there is something that just rubbed me wrong. And they didn't say anything mean. They weren't kind of biting in the way that they said stuff, but I don't care to see them again. I think we've all had that experience, right? A lot of it is in how we connect with our body language. So, mirroring and matching is actually a sociological phenomenon. That's a whole lot of words to say, kind of inside, we all do it. We all want to belong to the people that are around us. So if you ever are sitting in a group and you look around, you'll notice there's typically 3, 4, 5 different positions that people are sitting in. Has anyone ever noticed this before? Yeah? Has anyone ever yawned and then at the table you see someone else yawn? They're not tired, but there's something about being connected that physiological effect on each other. So I wish I would have known this back in the day. It is almost guaranteed second date stuff. You could have nothing in common, not know a single thing about the other person, and you go home and you're saying, I don't know what it was, but I felt like there was a real connection there. Now don't get me wrong, I married up. If any of you have met Krista, my wife, she's the academic director here. We're about to have a baby, and it is Dr. and Mrs. Allison. Mr. and Dr. Allison, Dr. and Mr. Allison. Wow. That was so much funnier in my head. But if you really are trying to have a good first date or make a great first impression, this is a way to do it. It's also a way to break down some of that barrier with your child as you approach a situation. Is there anyone done eating that would be willing to volunteer? Not everyone at once. Athena, come on up. So Athena has just applied for a job here as a residential coach. Okay, so if you would have a seat with me. As we're trying to talk right now, it actually feels, how does it feel for you right now?
Comfortable.
Comfortable? Do you feel like I'm kind of being attentive and that there's at least a little bit of alignment here?
Yeah.
Now, Athena, I'd like to interview you for this job.
Well, now I think you don't care.
Yeah, it really kind of seems that way, doesn't it? Would you mind getting in a position similar to me and just kind of relaxing a little? How are we now?
We're chill.
We're just chilling. We're just kind of hanging out and enjoying each other, right?
Not serious, yeah.
There's not one thing that I changed about my position in between those 2 moments with her. All right? Is that impactful for anyone? To realize that, man, the way that I sit says a lot about how I want to interact with this person. So, how do we do this? You can stay up here with me if you'd like to. We want to select 1 or 2 items that we want to align with. So that can be the physical position. That can be something like breathing patterns. If your student is really upset and they're breathing hard, we can actually breathe a little harder, and that will align with the student. Okay, we're not trying to escalate them. We're just, all right, so look, I need you to talk to me for a second. And we can match that breathing pattern. Same thing like a rhythmic movement. If you would tap your foot for me. Anyone have a student that taps when they're nervous or anxious? Yeah, I love Chad. I use this with Chad all the time. So Chad's just jumping around. So with a tapping foot, I could tap my foot as well, but that's pretty obvious. I might actually just do something like kind of tap my arm. Or maybe rock in place. Something that really is rhythmic, that creates a little bit of that connection. Now the key for these is that we want it to be subtle. All right? We're not trying to be over the top. That's why we want to pick one or two small things that we can focus on to create some alignment. Even right now, what's going on with our physical positions? I actually switched my position and you didn't realize it, and you leaned right forward and put your hands together the same way that I had them. Because we're really connected right now. So you want to make subtle changes to make sure that you're staying aligned. So I actually could tell if you were aligned or not by whether or not you changed your position. If I had made that small move and was kind of thinking about that and she had not, there's a little bit of work that I need to do to make sure that we're connecting. I probably need to ask some more questions and be a little bit curious. So you see if they respond. Yes?
How this works if the person's making eye contact. What if they're not?
Yeah, so...
What if they're too uncomfortable to make eye contact?
And we don't even have the beginning of the connection. Yeah, there actually are some other tools that we would use. The way that I like to think about the trainings that we do with our coaches is I tell them that we're giving them a tool belt. And there's a lot of different tools. Sometimes you need the screwdriver, sometimes you need a crescent wrench. Sometimes you got to just figure out what the heck you're working on before you even know what you should use. These are a couple of the tools that, in that situation, might not be that effective. When we get to the parent retreat, we really want to go through more tools. Okay? Does that kind of make sense? Kind of give myself a little bit of an out there.
When you get to the parent retreat, can that be one of the things that we talk about?
We'll talk with Rob and figure out what we've already got on the books. If not, I'll spend some time with you, and we can go over that, or we'll have some free time. Cool? So we want to see if they respond to our subtle changes. Thank you very much. I appreciate your help. So what's the difference between mirroring and matching? Not a whole lot. Mirroring is we want it to look like we're in a mirror. So if they have their right hand to their face, we have our left hand. So it looks like a direct reflection. A little bit more subtle way to do it is the matching, where you're opposite. Okay? If you're trying to match and you're sitting opposites, you're not getting a response, you can switch to the mirroring, which looks exactly like the other person. It's a little bit more overt, and you might get some alignment out of that. My goodness, I've been clicking. We do not teach these to the students. We teach it to the staff because it's not a bad thing if the student knows, but a lot of this stuff, if the student knows, then we kind of lose the edge of the tool. So it's one of those where it's not really being sneaky, but you want to kind of keep the tool to yourself because it's so valuable. Yes?
Are there certain behaviors that if you try to mirror or match, you could wind up escalating the situation instead that you should avoid?
Very, very high rhythms. Okay? If they're really bouncing off the walls and you're trying to bring them down, we actually have other tools we use in those moments. This is great if they're in a really low spot or a medium spot. It works better when you're in a stationary position. Okay, so if you're standing together, if you come up alongside and you're standing with them, if they're sitting down, if they're laying down on the ground, if they're sitting against the wall, those are really the times when this has the greatest impact. So, can you mirror or match too many things? That is a great question. Okay, we want to pick one or two items. The physiological one, getting in the same position, really is the best. If you take one thing away from the mirroring and matching, having a similar body position is really the number one thing. So, we've approached the situation. We are now mirroring or matching our child, and we want to find out what's the problem. We have no idea what's going on. I'm going to breeze through this really quick for time's sake. This is a much larger training that I think we'll be getting into with the parent retreat. But remembering that emotion drives all behavior. If you're seeing a behavior, there's emotion driving it. Whether it's they're really happy or excited about something, they're really frustrated, they're sad, they're feeling down. Every behavior has emotion behind it. We hammer that with our staff because it's so easy to get frustrated at the behavior and to lose sight of the fact that there is something underneath it. If you can actually figure out what the emotion is, if you can figure out what they're trying to communicate, then you can address the emotion much easier than the behavior. And if you steer that emotion in the right direction, the behavior will follow. Okay? As you can imagine, this is a very loaded subject. All right? So we're not going to get too deep into it. I'm sorry for that. But how do you figure out the problem? Listen. Take the time to seek to understand. Be curious. Ask a whole lot of questions. Repeat back what you've heard in your own words. And don't be afraid to ask your child if you're understanding their point of view. Okay, many times I feel like I'm understanding the student, and they're still frustrated or upset, and it just makes no sense to me. Because I'm like, I get it. I know exactly what you're trying to tell me. But then if I ask them, am I understanding things correctly? Sometimes I'm not. And sometimes they just don't realize that I am. So by being able to get on that same page and actively listen, we create a situation where we can begin moving towards a solution together. So it really is about creating that alignment. So moving towards resolution. Do you guys ever have your students tell you no? Or refuse to do something? No. No? No, you never hear it? Okay. We might not actually want them to say yes to everything. But we want them to say yes sometimes. Okay, I mentioned this briefly in the last parent seminar and had kind of a good response from it, so really wanted to get a little more in-depth to it. So this is a way of leading your child through a series of 2 or 3 minor yes questions. Has anyone ever gotten a call from a telemarketer? I get them from Charter Communications, which is like the cable company here, about every 2 weeks. Every time, please do not call me anymore. And every time they call, and is this Chris Allison? Yes, it is. Hi, this is so-and-so from Charter, and you do have internet with us, correct? Yes, I do. Okay, well, great. I'd like to inform you about, I'm sorry, I do not want to talk right now. But they asked me a couple questions that they know I'm actually going to respond yes to. It's a telemarketer trick they've been using for years and years and years. It's so effective because statistically, you are more likely to say yes if you have already answered yes a couple times. All right? So once you have received 2 or 3 yes responses to questions that you know you're going to get a yes to, you ask your bigger question. I want to tell you about the longest bus ride of my life. It happened 2 parent retreats ago while here at Calo. We had 1 bus, 48 students, 9 staff, and luggage, and we were all together. So we were 3 to a seat, coaches in the middle, coaches dividing boys and girls, and it was really hot because the air conditioning was not working. But at least we were going to have music to be able to listen to on the way there, because it was a 45-minute drive. And as soon as we started, we found out that the music was not working. So we now had a hot bus with nothing to do, and 48 of our students in one tight little cramped space. So we're about halfway there, 3/4 of the way there, and the driver goes, Chris, I'm not sure where I am. Oh boy. And then we realized we're at the end of a dead-end road. And then the students realized we were at the end of a dead-end road. And we're turning around, and as you can imagine, what was the response? Not really great. So they're starting to get loud and yelling back and forth at each other, and I turn around because I'm like, wow, what are the staff doing? And it was like a bunch of deer in headlights because they were just cramped in, they couldn't move. And they're like, what in the world do we do? I just finished PCS training, and I was like, let's give the yes set a shot. Let's see how this one goes. So I turn around, and I'm like, who here is absolutely miserable right now? Unanimous. Everybody. Yes, I am absolutely miserable. Who here wishes that we could get off the bus right now? Absolutely. Yes, everyone wants to get off. We're 15 minutes away. Who can hold it together for just 15 more minutes, and then we'll get off this bus? Yeah, I guess so. There were a couple that weren't real happy about it, but you know what? It turned around and things came back down, and we actually had as enjoyable of a hot musicless bus ride as you could.